Hey guys, this is Mimo coming to you with a Royal Paladin deck profile. This deck is full of some proxies because a lot of the cards are not out yet. However, half of them that are proxied will be coming out within the end of the month. Set 5, Awakening of the Twin Blades, which after the longest time is finally coming here. However, this deck does not solely rely on Majesty Lord Blaster like a lot of Blaster players think it would. So our starter is Wingle Brave. For those of you who don't know, he's a 5k starter with Pioneer, so he moves out, and when he boosts a Blaster and the Blaster hits, you can even be hitting a rear guard, you can soul charge Wingle Brave and you can search out any Blaster card from your deck to your hand. So that's done. Starter's complete. Next for grade 3s we have 2 Blaster Blade Bursts. He's a manga promo which is not coming out anytime soon until they announce where he comes out in. He's Blaster Blade as a grade 3 from the manga used by Kai, not Aichi, and he has 3 abilities. They all are Vanguard slot only. Alright, the first one is he cannot be boosted while he's the Vanguard. So basically similar to Alfred. That's truly his only downside. Second skill, Counterblast 2 Royal Paladins. He will gain the power of both Royal Paladin rear guards in your front row next to him. Basically, he can get boosted by a good 20k, if not more if you have 11k rear guards. Last effect, while he's the Vanguard and he attacks the Vanguard, he gains 3k. So pretty much he is a 33k hitter when you use his counterblast, and sure, yeah, he's only 13 when he attacks without a boost or without using his counterblast. That's why this deck runs draw triggers. Margle is seriously comboed with this card in order to hit 16k rows when you deem the counterblast is still not yet necessary. I've gone games where I never used the counterblast in the end. I probably didn't pop it at all because by the time I hit him at 5 damage, I had 20k row with a Bedivere, and I had a nice 18k row on the other side, and my opponent's hand was 2 cards, so it wasn't even necessary at that point. Next on the list we have 2 Pendragon. The reason is Pendragon is an overall steady Vanguard. He lets you limit break into your other Vanguards, which is kind of great in this deck since the deck runs a little like a toolbox. The reason I say a toolbox is because you try and Pendragon into the Royal Paladin Vanguard that you find you need at the time. Most of the time it's a Blaster, heck, sometimes it's even been Gancelot. I kid you not. But, hey. Point is, 15k when he's ridden, and you're not forced to finish off his limit break. The only thing you're forced to do is check the top 5 and shuffle your deck. You're not forced to actually ride any of the options, so it's perfectly great. Next option we have is Majesty Lord Blaster. Now, any of you knowing what set 5 is coming with are probably going insane for this card if you want to make Royal Paladins. I'll just give the quick rundown for those who are out of date and behind. He's one of the cover cards of set 5. He has 10k base. He's a Blaster. He has 2 skills, both of which only work in the Vanguard slot. One is a passive continuous skill where if Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark are in the soul, only the originals, mind you, he gains 2000 power in a critical, and while he's in the Vanguard slot, if he attacks, his active ability is that you can soul charge a Blaster Blade and Blaster Dark in your rear guard to your soul, and he will gain 10k for that turn, also triggering his passive, so it's really like 12k 2 crit for that turn, the 2k and 2 crit stay for a long time. So there's our MLB, and next we have is Exculpate the Blaster. This is pretty much what Aichi gets instead of Majesty Lord in the manga. He has a lot more restrictions upon him, but his power up is a lot more bursty, I find. but he is often worth doing the play, especially if you have a backup grade 3 in your hand. His effects are he cannot be ridden unless you cannot ride him unless you have a grade 3 Royal Paladin. So sure, yeah, it qualifies more so like a cross ride, but if you have Pendragon's Limit Break, you can pretty much skip all the shenanigans and go straight to it. Second, he cannot attack unless Blaster Blade is in the soul. What a coincidence, whole point of the deck. And worst comes to worst, you just sit on him in your hand, use him for a perfect guard, or get MLB to soul charge the Blaster Blade. I'm thinking of running Dream Painters, which are the 6k units that when you call you can soul charge one of the same clan, because of this guy, but I'm still not done testing the deck this way. It's been working really great. If I find I miss Blaster Blade getting into that soul spot for him often, though, I will end up teching in 1 or 2 Dream Painters. So it's not really a big problem. Lastly, his next restriction is he cannot be called to the rear guard. If he is, he retires himself. Counterblast 3, he get an attack all units on your opponent's side of the field at the same time, like Vermilion for both rows. And no, that is not a typo. That is his actual effect. And his next effect is when he attacks, he is forced to Soul Blast all the units in the soul, except for Blaster Blade himself. Only the original Blaster Blades. And he will gain 2,000 power for each card Soul Blasted this way. They can even be Shadow Paladins. Lastly, after his attack is done, you have to Superior Ride a Blaster Blade from your Soul or Drop Zone in case you sent it there with Apocalypse Bat. And after riding it, Soul Blast everything into the Drop Zone. Just to make sure, let's say you had Wingle Brave in there as well because you popped its effect after you hit something, you won't have it stuck. You won't have it in there as another downside for pretty much -5ing your opponent's field. Lastly, we have our Solitary Knight Gancelot. For those of you who know, use him right. There's no point explaining. For those of you who don't, I'm just not going to bother until you figure out his good points. So that's our grade 3s. We have 7 grade 3s with the Blaster Blade bursts. That means 4 of the 7 grade 3s are blaster units, so you will often be triggering cards, effects that require a blast in your Vanguard slot. Next we have the grade 2s. The lovely grade 2s, the key focuses of the blaster deck aside from the grade 3s. We have 3 Blaster Blade. Self-explanatory. I'm trying not to run 4 because it gets a little clunky, and the deck, although it's not too focused on MLB, the thing is I don't want to run 2 just in case Exculpate gets fucked over. So I'll be keeping it at 3 for now. Next we have not 1, but 2 Blaster Dark. The reason not 3 and I'm risking it at 2 is because the deck isn't solely focused on MLB. I'm running 1 copy similar to how the ban list in Japan works, but it's not really because of the ban list. I kind of always did play it like that. I'm going to rush now because I need to keep this under 15 minutes. Next we have Blaster Blade Spirit. If he's attacked, he retires no matter what. Not when he attacks, when he is attacked. He's a 10k Blaster Blade. When you Superior Call him from your deck, you can counterblast 1, retire a front row rear guard. That's grade 2 or higher on your opponent's side of the field. And at all times, he also counts as a Gold Paladin, so he doesn't only have to be in a Royal Paladin deck. Next we have Knight of Loyalty. Bedivere. He's a 9k grade 2. When you have a Blaster Vanguard, he gains 3,000 power on the attack. So 12k hitter. Perfect. Since most of your deck's Vanguards will be Blasters. Next we have Starcall Trumpeter. She is like Akane for Blasters. Counterblast 2 when she's called to the rear or Vanguard. Superior Call 1 Blaster grade 2 or lower unit from your deck. The reason it's 2 or lower is because you can even Superior Call Blaster Javelin, which is sometimes a good card to have. Grade 1s. 4 Marin. We have 4 Knight of Friendship K. Knight of Friendship K has the same effect as Bedivere. He's 7k, and when you have a Royal Paladin Vanguard, when you have a Blaster Vanguard and he attacks, he gains 3,000, making him a 10k row. So that's why you have to be careful with grade 1s in this deck. It's a little offensive. You have 3 guards. You can run 4 if you take out the 1 Pegasus Knight, which you will sometimes be riding, sometimes be using the rear guard. You have 2 Blaster Javelin, just in case you really need to set off Wingle Brave's effect if you got royally screwed over. You have 2 Barkle, another reason why we're taking the 1 Pegasus Knight. Great for helping you fix up your ride if you need to, and great for helping you get your boosters in case you're being too offensive with your grade 1s and you have only Ks. Next you have, yes, I'm going to be following pretty much the basic trigger lineup. I have 4 Margle, and this card will mainly be comboing with your Blaster Blade Burst and Exculpate the Blaster. I have 4 Flogel. I find since you can fetch them out with Barkle, you can determine whether or not you want your deck to be reliant upon them mid-game or not, because either you choose to just call them out all out with Barkle, or you just don't and you make your lineup attack as if you had stand triggers. It's pretty much either or. It allows you to be either a deck that relies on stands, so go Rearguard, Vanguard, Rearguard, or if you decide to say, just screw it, I'm going to Barkle them all out, you'll just go Vanguard and double Rearguard for your lineup. So it works perfectly fine. And I find the base trigger lineup allows you to remember how many of each trigger you have left anyway the most. For crits, we have 2 Liu and 2 Epona. I only have 2 Liu, but the thing is, I don't find a Royal Paladin Blaster Blade deck complete unless you have both Epona and Liu. I find they've been too iconic to the Royal Paladins for too long for you to not use them. Lastly, we have our 4 Elaine. So there's our deck profile, and one day I will be giving a video on a couple of the combos and how some of the key cards work together. Until then, pretty much try it out, people. Majesty Lord Blaster at 4 and Palamedes at 4 is not the only way to go. Once set 5 comes out, only a month later will we be getting Exculpate the Blaster as a box topper in Comic Styles, which is amazing to do, since Comic Styles will have a bunch of nice shit for so many clans. So that there's going to be a lot of spare Exculpates out there. And also, the only real cards that are missing from this deck after Exculpate the Blaster comes out are really, if you think about it, it's Blaster Blade Burst and Blaster Blade Spirit. Those are the only 2 cards that will be missing. So one comes out set 9 and one comes out as a promo. So it's not like we have too much to wait for, since after we get Comic Styles, all we're waiting on is set, 8, a trial deck, and 9. So it's not too bad. We already have the months that they're going to be released. So yeah, basically, oh, and last thing, you use Blaster Blade Spirit in your Vanguard slot as often as you can. He acts as your Gallatin for the deck, although he's a little more suicidal, and the reason is he's better to have in front of Wingle Brave than it would be any of the regular blasters, because, well, you want 10k in front of it to hit for 15, so that on the turn you're attacking with your grade 2s, it's a lot easier for them to say no guard to it, because they're not going to be able to just play 5k guarded most of the time. They'll have to waste a 10k, whereas they have to deem, do I try and seal his deck off, or do I just let it through because he probably already has another grade 3? At that point, it's a dilemma for them, because this deck isn't solely relying on MLB. So the setup isn't as heavy, and you can kind of change it up from time to time. The only thing is, I say MLB should not be forced too early in the game. If you do, and you don't have enough backup for it or ways to refill the field like with a Star Call, you may end up minusing your hand a little too much, and that may bite you back in the ass like soon after. So be careful with MLB, people, and have a nice day. Enjoy this deck if you decide to make it online or anything like that, and I'm out.